problem and contradiction, which deeply involved such disparate places as Britain, Spain, Haiti, and ancient Rome. For me, the term inhuman has two connotations with respect to our subject. After first considering the title of W. Somerset Maugham's famous novel of 1915, Of Human Bondage, and discussing the issue with friends and family, it occurred to me that chattel slavery is the most extreme example we have, not only of domination and oppression, but of human attempts to dehumanize other people. When the Spiritans, a French Catholic missionary group, published in 1999 a special study of the Church and slavery, they chose the title L'esclavage négation de l'humain, Slavery, the Negation of the Human. Under Roman law, as well as in the United States, slaves were deprived of legally recognized spouses or families, and of genuine property ownership. As with most domestic animals, their lowly status was enforced by the threat of almost unlimited physical punishment. As Frederick Douglass put it, after describing the ways that the slave breaker Mr. Covey had tamed him, "I was broken in body, soul, and spirit. My natural elasticity was crushed, my intellect languished, the disposition to read departed, the cheerful spark that lingered about my eye died. The dark night of slavery closed in upon me, and behold a man transformed into a brute." In an earlier essay on this subject, I have theorized that, given the repeated comparisons of slaves to domestic animals throughout history, and Aristotle wrote that the ox was a poor man's slave, the initial enslavement and bestialization of prisoners of war may well have been modeled on the successful techniques of taming and domesticating wild animals. But some animals could never be domesticated, and even those slaves who at times felt themselves transformed, like Douglass, into brutes, did not lose their essential humanity, a fact that repeatedly underscored the preeminent contradiction of inhuman bondage. Indeed, one of the central and inspiring truths of African American history, a truth dramatized by fugitives like Frederick Douglass, was the way slaves succeeded in asserting their humanity and reinventing their diverse cultures, despite being torn away from their natal African families and societies, despite being continuously humiliated, bought and sold, and often subjected to torture and the threat of death. Thus the word inhuman in this book's title refers to the unconscionable and unsuccessful goal of bestializing, in the form of pets as well as beasts of burden, a class of human beings. This is not meant to deny, as much slave testimony indicates, that some slaves suffered recurrent psychological as well as physical damage. The second aspect of inhuman, when linked with bondage, refers to the special harshness of New World slavery, which white colonists almost always confined, from the very beginning, to Native Americans and then overwhelmingly to black Africans. In both cases to people who were strikingly different in physical appearance as well as in cultural background. Though I do not believe that various historical examples of slavery can be ranked on a scale of severity, there can be no doubt that racial slavery in the Americas widened the gap between slaves and the descendants of slaves in one caste-like group, and non-slave populations that, despite their internal hierarchies, now appeared to be forever free. I should add that racial distinctions became more ambiguous as a result of sexual exploitation and intermixture, which meant that slaves like Frederick Douglass were one-half white. In addition to this racist element, most slaves in the New World became chained to a mercantilist or capitalist system that intensified labor in order to maximize production for distant international markets. And after about 1815, the slave system in the United States became distinctive by virtually closing off the possibility of manumission, which in many societies had been at least a theoretical check on dehumanization, since it showed that a slave was capable of becoming a free person. Despite exceptions, personified by various kinds of highly privileged slaves, American slavery thus became the ultimate form of inhuman bondage. This book originated in an intensive 2-week summer seminar I began teaching in 1994 for high school teachers, mostly from New York City. My scholarly work on slavery